Oops. Let's just put it on the wrong place, shall we? Oh, we've lost the music. How rude. There we go. Hi, everybody. It's actually warm here. It's very sunny and very warm outside, which is kind of a nice change from what we've had normally. And I'm kind of looking forward to it. The only problem is that means that this office is going to start getting hot. And as a result, air conditioning is just going to have to start coming in, and I have fans that I'm going to have to start turning on and all that. Hi, everybody. I see we've got DJ Quiver, Aragwin, Weirdness 36, Uninspired Twitch name, which is an inspired Twitch name, as I think everybody tells you. I have to imagine anyway, because it sure is. Yes, indeed, Aragwin, it is hot. Or at least it's hot for where I live. And I am thankfully very pleased that that's the situation that we find ourselves in. Yeah, technically, so all the games that we stream in here are technically streamed out of my office. It's in this room. I'm seated right now at the computer in which I actually work. It's my own personal computer, but it's also the computer with which I would use to remote into my office if I'm not going in, or my work office, I suppose I should say. But the rest of where we actually game is actually down there. With microphones and lights and cameras all set up and sort of waiting for when that needs to be. So my office kind of became the streaming space. And while it is a pretty compact space, it's been serving us well. I've been pleased with it, at least. It's good to see you, Flower of August. But yeah, no, we've been dealing with Sunday business meetings that have never been so fun. I suppose you could say that, yeah. I'm lucky enough that I haven't had to work Sundays. You're getting settled into your new temporary office is not bad, but it's huge and it echoes. So I do have some sound paneling in here. I haven't done the typical streamer thing of covering 4 walls, ceiling, and floor with acoustic paneling, but there are a few in here in order to make sure that I reduce the echo in here. The other thing is that books do a great job at reducing echo, because it's essentially just mass. Echo tends to be reduced by broken up surfaces, and also it absorbs sound if it has mass, so that helps. So I do my video calls in my digital background, or do I show everyone at work my nerdiness? Everyone at my work has to know my nerdiness, but seeing as how I work in the video game industry, no one really blinks if I've got things like video game systems or Amiibo behind me. Nobody cares. It's just kind of the way it is. Every once in a while I wonder whether I'm going to reconfigure this office to make it just a little bit better in terms of its aesthetic, but I'm not convinced I need to do that right away. I already have better lighting, camera, and microphone than almost anybody I work with, so it helps. It's true, the balance is, do I unpack some stuff and then get less echo, or do I leave some stuff packed and save myself time in June? For the sake of a month, I wouldn't necessarily unpack a whole lot if it's really just going to be a month. So did you ask about the body pillows? Now, I don't discuss my body pillows. One time we were joking that we should make Brahm body pillows, or at least the body pillow cover, so that people could just have a Brahm stretched out on their bed. But we have not gone ahead and done that, not yet. Anyway, we'd have to. Well, I guess we'd have to commission somebody to do the actual drawing, and then we'd have to find a place that could print body pillow covers. Mia, when are things not weird around here? When has that ever happened? I actually have unpacked most of my stuff. The one lazy thing that I haven't done since moving here is that I purchased paint to paint the trim and the doors in this place, and I still haven't done it. And I think it's just because I still have a lot of resentment towards painting. It was a nightmare painting this place before. And it makes me think that if I ever have to do it again, I just might pay somebody because, whoa, it sucked getting here. Because we also did it during the pandemic while there was a curfew in place. So literally what I had to do, Kate basically came here and painted during the day while I worked. Then I would finish work, walk over to my parents' place, get a car, drive here, help out for a couple of hours, clean everything up, drive back to my parents' place, and then walk back to the apartment that we were in because we had to get that done by 8 o'clock, and it was every night. So it sucked. It was really bad. Oh, Loomba's still asleep. Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me get Loomba on. Just give me 2 seconds here. Because that's a thing I can do. It's just not on this computer. It's on a different one. We'll just let that computer boot, and then as soon as it's up, I will get you your bot. Is it even booting? Yes, it is. Okay. 2 more seconds. I think that should have done it. If I try this now, yep. No, I don't discuss my body pillows. What I will say though is that we're doing a standard clinic hours today, but we did have a topic to start off with that I wanted to get into because there was an event that occurred in our recent session that made me think about what the fuck did I say? I would love to read a novel about a teen. What? Okay, never mind. I won't pay attention to that quote. Something that happened in our last session, and it made me think about today's topic. So I will give you a small recap about what happened, and then we'll moving on into it. We were playing our Werewolf the Apocalypse 5th edition campaign, and at one point in the campaign, without spoiling anything that occurred, I described one character killing another character, a minor character, an NPC who was supposed to be like a one and done sort of situation. And so I described this character just being pushed out into a street to get hit by a truck or a bus or something like that. And I didn't really think much of it other than like, yep, just someone having a horrible thing happen to them, but I had introduced this character literally 5 minutes before, and I didn't think anything of it. And then Kate, who was the sort of the PC who was in the middle of that scene, then chewed for a second and then flashed a yellow card, a pause card, which is one of our safety tools, and said, so I feel like a line has been crossed. One of our lines, as opposed like in context of our lines and veils, because I had described the character as young, close to, I said around 17. And she said, we have a line against harming innocent children. And I feel like this is kind of leaning close to that point. And immediately I was like, oh, okay, well, this is not a big deal. He's just just some random NPC. It's no big deal. So, sorry, I didn't say that he got pushed into the street to get hit by a bus. I said that the character's neck got snapped. And instead, I had the character push that character into traffic, which caused cars to like screech to a halt, which gave this character the opportunity to run away. And I said, is that okay? And Kate's like, yep, no problem. That solves any issue that I have with this. And we moved on. And I played out the rest of the session. I was like, yeah, no big deal. I didn't really think much of it. At the time, I was just like, oh, good, our safety cards worked, right? A player was dissatisfied, and we moved on. The thing is, I realized after the fact, once we had finished streaming and we were getting dinner ready, I thought for a second, the character wasn't an innocent, and the character wasn't really a child. And I thought, because I was trying to evaluate, had I don't intentionally cross lines. I think that it happens a lot with all groups, is that sometimes somebody does something inadvertently, and that's why we have safety cards. And I thought, well, I could have protested. I could have said, Kate, this character was not an innocent. I know this character has done things that they probably shouldn't have, and I know that this character is not really a child either. 17 to me is not a kid. I could have protested this, and I didn't. Now, I didn't want to, and we came up with another solution. We did that solution really quickly, and we moved on. And I realized that that's ego that can interfere with the ability to run a game properly. It fucks with you in your head, this concept of, but I was right. But I knew what I was trying to do. And Kate never thought that I was doing something that I intentionally to harm anybody or whatever. She just flashed a card because she wanted to. And I realized that it's one of the things that we have to balance very carefully in the context of a role-playing game is our ego. Not talking about the Freudian ego id, super ego. Yeah, sort of thing, because for that it is it is pleasure and id is pleasure, superego would be morality, and ego is kind of reality, and it's the one that governs all of them. But instead it's more ego in terms of your arrogance or your self-importance, your conceit. Somebody who's said to have a large ego, at least in North American English, is somebody who thinks very highly of themselves, or somebody who specifically puts themselves out there to say, my opinions are worthwhile, my opinions are valid, I want you to accept my reality as opposed to me accepting yours. And I realized in that moment that if I had protested, if I had gone up against Kate in that moment and said, well, just so you know, it wasn't really a big deal. Just so you know, I was right in that situation because I had all the information and she didn't. Then that would have just been me tripping on my own ego. It would have been me deciding that my pride was more important than another player's safety in that moment. And I can remember early on in my role-playing career that's something that I absolutely would have done. And I think that a lot of people do. And I think a lot of people would still do. This idea of, I want to make sure that other people know that I was correct, or at the very least that I was not wrong. But what good is that? What good is my inflating my own ego and pushing it on other people? So I began thinking originally, when I was thinking of this clinic hours, I was thinking I would just go out there and be like, your ego is dumb. Your ego is bad. The idea of ego is something that's going to harm you in the context of a role-playing game. And then I realized that that's not true. You need a certain amount of ego, because without ego, you're not contributing. You're not putting yourself forward. You're not creating alongside everyone else. Push your ego down too much and people can walk over you, even if they don't intend to. And so it's finding that balance, finding that kind of road of where you need to go is difficult here. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Flower of August asks a question. I should say featured chat ended, so I don't have a queue at the moment other than what other people will flag for me. So I'm going to do my best to catch questions as we go on, but I can't display them on screen at the moment other than what you already see over here. Featured chat, I have to find a replacement for it. I haven't yet. But Flower of August asks, do you think you would have handled that situation differently outside of a streaming context? You're my example from Werewolf. Even if that just means I would have taken more time to talk it out before moving on. I think one of the main issues in this particular situation is that you gain no benefit from arguing over such a minor point if it means that one player gets to feel better and another player it doesn't affect them at all. All I needed to do was come up with a very quick solution that didn't involve this character's death. And I did. It was not hard. It took me all of 5 seconds to fix the problem after it was raised. And it meant that my player got to feel better about things and we moved on. If I had taken the time to be like, well, you know, Kate, you don't know about this, but this, and this, that doesn't serve anything except to try to absolve myself of guilt that I shouldn't have to feel, or to prove that I was correct for no reason at all. And that's something that I think is dangerous for storytellers, game masters, dungeon masters out there, that they have this sort of, but I'm in control and therefore I need to assert that I am correct or prove that I have a handle on things. And I don't think that's true. The cost to my ego was nothing because I knew that it didn't really matter to anybody else if I had made the change. But the cost to a player to try to argue against them and to invalidate what their feelings were in that moment would have been much, much higher. So it wasn't an easy, it was an easy choice to make. So no, I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that we were streaming. It's what I would have done in a normal tabletop situation afterwards. After the game, we talked about it. And after the game, I said, you know, like, that's what I was thinking at the time. But like, no big deal. I'm glad that that was the way that it turned out. And Kate was like, oh yeah, no, of course. Like, I totally get it. And yeah, sure. He was probably fine. You know, I just brought it up because I didn't want to, like, I didn't want to have that thing to think about. And I was like, yeah, sure. And that was that. That worked out well. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with how it went. Osub says, I wonder how much ego factors into the DM/GM/ST versus player dynamic that can arise with some groups. Well, this is an issue that I find with players, is that sometimes player ego is inflated. We've gone over player types, and one of the player types, the tactician, to me, is somebody who actually wants to defeat the GM's plans. Not in a bad way, but a tactician is trying to maximize their ability to overcome obstacles using a minimum of resource depletion, and they're willing to slow the game down in order to do it. But in the end, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, I planned for this. I planned for this. Power gamers do a similar thing where they say, I have mastered the rules to the point where I get an advantage over other people. And perhaps I get an advantage over the game master or storyteller. And in some ways, these forms of play are completely reasonable, and I applaud them. Go for it. If that's how you want to play, and as long as you're not reducing anyone else's fun at the table, including the storytellers, all good. All good. No problem. Go for it. But ego can come into play there. And then when it becomes about I beat you, or I managed to do something and you didn't see it coming and therefore hooray, well, then you run into an issue. I have encouraged this behavior in players who have very little role-playing experience or ones who are young. I'm completely fine with them crowing over them defeating me because I also know the reality of it. In the context of a collaborative storytelling environment, there aren't really winners and losers in terms of an individual. It comes down to, was the story interesting for everybody who played? But also, if I'm the referee in the world and I'm also the omnipotent being in the world, then there is no beating me if I don't want to be beaten, right? That's kind of like the counterplay here. You can break the game as much as you want by trying to min-max your character, or you can spend 6 hours trying to come up with a plan, but all I have to do is say, yes, but my character's 3 times as strong, or yes, your carefully laid plan left out this detail because I made sure that it happened. Or what you thought were 60 people in an area, now it's 700 people in an area, so it's going to be a lot more difficult for you. Your intelligence was wrong or faulty. I can beat anyone if I'm the storyteller, but what's the point? It would actively ruin the game. So I will let players have that ego to a certain degree, but afterwards, it starts to grate on me a little bit. And especially it grates on me when players do it to each other, which can often happen in a PvP circumstance, which is more common in LARP play than in tabletop play, where I have this sort of feeling of you're still trying to create an overall story. And you can feel good about how, you came up with a great plan, you used the rules to your advantage, but it really starts to hitch when it starts being that I pulled one over on these other people as opposed to my character pulled one over these other characters. Because then it starts implying I deserve to have more fun than other players because I am smarter, more attractive, luckier, or whatever. And then in that case, that's your ego kind of inflating and inflating your own self-importance that you are overshadowing other people at the table. And remember that for me, the number one rule has to be that whatever you do, it should be done in the service of everyone's fun at the table, including your own, but including everyone else. So that's where ego gets a little tricky. DJ Quiver says, I'm always clarifying stuff when I am mistaken, giving reasons about why I thought something. I've always thought that was an anxiety thing, maybe not. So clarifying in it of itself isn't necessarily bad, but clarifying when it's not the appropriate time, or clarifying as a defense mechanism when there's nothing to defend, that is something that I find can be more a question of your own ego than it is about other people. It can also have a root in anxiety. Now, I'm not a doctor. I am not a professional. Not a doctor. I am not also a mental health professional. Anxiety is a serious thing that people have struggled with and suffered for a very long time, and it's a complicated thing to deal with. I should know. I have suffered from anxiety in the past. But one thing that helped me was realizing that the default isn't everyone is looking for is that I am screwing up. The default isn't everybody assumes that I have done wrong. Because the instant that I start feeling that, then we have a problem. I am not necessarily, by definition, by default, incorrect. People trust me. And therefore, if they trust me, I don't have to step forward and defend everything that I do. And if they stand against me and if they say, hey, I would prefer that this not be this way, if it doesn't cost me anything, I can say, sure, yes. And then we can move forward. Ellie Spot says, I think arguing you as an ST have the facts that may not have been presented to the players and therefore didn't cross a line from a fact point of view kind of would be missing the point. Lines are feelings or perception based, so if a player felt uncomfortable about it, the line was crossed or moved close in a way that the player became uncomfortable about it. So yes, exactly. It doesn't matter if I didn't actually cross a line. What matters is that someone felt that I might have crossed the line. Hi, Lulu. Nice to see you. That's where we have to sort of keep ourselves in check a little bit. Hey, Playmat. Nice to see you, a fellow local content creator here. Super appreciated to see you here. This is where I run into some issues when I talk about safety tools here, and people think, well, if you're showing your safety tools online, you should know that safety tools don't work for everybody, which I think is correct. But then they say, well, the issue is that if you're showing a safety tool, what you're saying is they're saying that I did wrong. But that's not what a safety tool is at all. A safety tool is expressing I'm not okay, or I want to say something, or I am doing well right now, as opposed to saying you screwed up, you are the problem. The problem is there's a thing out here that I'm uncomfortable with. Can we do something about it? Not You are making me uncomfortable. And if the answer is you are making me uncomfortable, then yes, stop, talk about it, figure it out. That's important. But it doesn't matter what the reality is. What matters is what perception is, because perception is in fact the only reality that matters, especially if you're playing a game. So that's where we're at the moment here. Reading aloud says an unbalanced ego will always demand from others to their imbalance. It can cause trapped feelings or social tiredness or anxiety in the other players. A balance is more like a shield. It protects a person's self-image from external attack or false impressions. Yeah, for sure. Ellie Spot goes on to say that if the character was perceived as too young and innocent, that's the perception players are reacting on. If it would be essential for the storyteller to harm the character, then maybe instead of doubling down and arguing facts, a wiser approach would be to reintroduce the character in a later scene, present them as more mature, and make it clear why they're not innocent, thus creating the perception that the storyteller was originally trying to create, which is kind of the important part. Rinu says it's satisfying to sometimes get a one-up on the ST and do something that isn't anticipated, but constantly trying to overturn plans gets exhausting. Instead of enjoying the flow of the story, it becomes about the one-up. And some players live for that one-up. And I'm okay with players living for the one-up. What I'm not okay with is for players to assume that the one-up is as a result of them being better than another player or better than the storyteller. I outwitted you this time. Great feeling. I'm constantly dunking on you because I'm just a better player than you. Not so good. And especially if it comes to a storyteller, then at that point, all you're really doing is telling the storyteller, well, I guess I have to make everything that much harder. And this is one of the ways in which ego can also affect. If you've created a character that is power tweaked and min-maxed so that you are just more effective than the other players, depending on the system that you're playing, your ego, your need to display your own mastery, might be hurting the other experiences at the table. Because, for instance, in a World of Darkness game, if your character is 65% better than all the other players at the table, or all the other characters at the table at, say, combat, but everybody wants to participate in combat, it can become very, very difficult to run a combat that feels fair. Because on the one hand, you're going to have this character who can one-shot things, and so therefore no one else gets to participate, or the enemy has to be so much more dangerous that the other players then run the risk of feeling like they're going to get one shot and therefore they can't compete and they can't participate. So yeah, in some cases that means your character is getting to enact their power fantasy of like, I get to be the big combat person. But in the other way, that if you have done such a thing in a way that you're trying to dunk on the storyteller, you're preventing the other players from doing anything at all. Flower of August says that point about the GM is unbeatable if they want to be does put me on the track of thinking about the philosophy that the rules are there to protect the players against the storyteller, which is quite flawed, but it was present in a section of the tabletop role-playing community. I agree. I completely agree about this. The storyteller is unbeatable if they want to be. The secret hidden truth to that is players are also unbeatable if they want to be, because you can simply say, my character stabs you in the face and they fall down. And someone can say, yeah, but that's against the rules. And the player can say, it's a story. I can say whatever I want. That's essentially the players are, as part of the social contract of the table, saying to the storyteller or game master, we trust you to be a fair adjudicator and a fair worldsmith, a fair challenge master for us. So if the storyteller then starts abusing that trust, they're not doing anything right, but players can equally abuse that trust. The rules are there in order to create interesting ways for everybody at the table to engage with a story and also gamify it to a certain degree. It's not about trying to protect anybody from anyone. Because if your notion is, I need protection from you, then you become adversarial. And an adversarial relationship at the table is not one that I enjoy, and I would argue likely it's not something that most people should enjoy anyway. Yep, Aragorn is given a good sort of rundown here. 36 says, yeah, that's why the descriptive text for your safety cards is a difficult and complex topic. Realized this when I saw the text go through various iterations. We're still iterating. So these are the safety cards that we've kind of developed for our own use, and you can find out more information about that at rpgclinic.com/safety. But it took us over a year to kind of get a wording that we were satisfied with. And even as recently as last session, there was a question of, well, I wasn't sure if I wanted to put this up there because what I really needed was just a moment to think. And I said, well, yeah, but it's a pause card, so it's okay. You can hold the pause card up, and that's like pushing pause, and we can wait. And so then I was like, oh, but do we need to update the wording on how we describe these cards? And that became a question that we, thought about. The design of what these cards look like, the material in which the cards are made out of, all of these things take a lot of time. And you'd think that something as simple as this can be easy. And in fact, I would argue that it's the simple things that can often be the hardest, especially in terms of design. Narrative design is incredibly tricky in that way, but systems design and game design have the same issue. What you might think is, I swing sword, I hit thing, it does number of damage. If number of damage then puts current damage over max damage, then thing dies. You're missing out on a lot of the nuance and subtext of what goes into actually creating these systems. And safety systems are in much the same way. The reason that we don't play, for instance, with the X card is because I personally am not satisfied with the X card's usability in some ways. Now, I think the X card is a fantastic invention, and I think that if you're using it, great, go for it. But it doesn't fit my needs. And the main thing that I think the X card doesn't do is that it's an all or nothing thing. It doesn't provide like the hard stop that we want, but what it really doesn't do is it doesn't provide the play, the go, the yes. And the reason why we have this card is partially because we want to train players to feel like it's okay to pick up and handle their safety cards. Because if you're not used to using a safety tool, you won't use it. Even in moments where you think you will, it's in those moments of crisis that you're least likely to do something that you aren't used to. The problem with a fire extinguisher is that if you don't know how to use one, it doesn't matter if you have one. Because when the fire starts, if you're panicking, that's not the moment that you're going to sit down and read the instructions. So safety tools have to be, by their very nature, at least easy to understand, but it's also why we go over what the safety cards do at the start of each session, why we always pick them up, why we always handle them at the start of each session, is because if we aren't used to it, they're not going to get used. I have been in, unfortunately, many games where everyone's told when they join the game, hey, if you have any problems, just go talk to a storyteller. And then that's the last that they hear about it. Or maybe they have lines and veils that they talk about, and then they never talk about anything ever again. Or maybe they even have an X card, and the X card is there on the table, but it's this big beacon of discomfort. And it's this moment where, okay, there's an X card, but if I touch it, I'm the problem. I'm the one who's stepping out of the established order. I'm the one who's saying that we have to do something wrong, which is why we created the cards that we did for us. Again, it's completely fine if the cards don't work for you, and if the X card works for you, fantastic. But we really do encourage, no matter what safety tools you use them properly. But use them often, which is why we included the positive reinforcement card, right? The, hey, I'm really enjoying this. I might look like I'm sad or upset, but I'm not. I am actively like, yay, I'm having a good time. Because then you're used to picking up a card. As Aragorn says, it's like Kate says, it's equating to knowing where a fire extinguisher is versus how to take it off the wall and using it. Weirdness says, yeah, always having a character in the limelight because they have the best stats and why would you bother is frustrating. Yes. The Superman problem transferred to different mediums, Abika? Yeah, very much so. The problem with Superman is that Superman can do anything except when he can't do something because they've decided that he can't. And that's not to say that you shouldn't create a character in a game that is very good at something. And that's not to say that power gamers are doing something wrong. But there's also an understanding that has to come with it, where if all you're doing is sinking more and more of yourself into getting your character to be good at a thing that regularly happens in the game that other people want to participate in, then what you're doing is you're taking more and more opportunities away from other people, or invalidating more and more of what their character can do. And sometimes it's a matter of you taking a step back and realizing that it's time for you to let their egos get inflated a little bit instead of your own. Let's see. Reading Loud says, you flash back to your latest humiliation. Your fear magnifies and your powerlessness envelops you. Though you're here and present, you are lost in how useless you feel. Lose a turn. Get out of my head. Yeah, get out of my head. That does sound like an exalted charm. But I mean, we've been talking about ego and how it can damage, but ego also is critically important for you to be able to step up. One of the player types is casual. Casual gamers are the ones who show up because it's what their other friends are doing. They tend not to learn the rules, or they learn the rules as little as possible. They don't stretch themselves to involve themselves in the game that much. They're there mostly because they're there to have a good time with other people. They don't really want to interfere that much. That's okay. But the problem is that when you have somebody who wants to participate and they feel they can't, because they're not willing to put their ego up to the point where they give themselves as much importance as they give to the rest of the table. If I am in a room surrounded by people who are of higher status than me, let's say I'm at work and I'm sitting with the CEO and I'm sitting with the vice president and I'm sitting with my boss, and then there's me, and they're so much higher than I am in terms of importance, I might feel like I shouldn't talk, I shouldn't make waves, I shouldn't be there. I should just sit here and listen to everybody else, because if I make a mistake, it could be bad and they could feel badly about what I've done, and maybe I won't get invited again. And in reality, that often damages what other people are looking for. If you're invited to the table, it means that people want you to participate. So if you put everybody else up on a pedestal and you don't bring yourself up with them, then you're likely to not participate, in which case then other people will have to spend energy to bring you along with them, or they won't pay attention to you at all. I'm not saying that this is easy, and I'm not saying that if you don't put yourself on that pedestal with them that you're a bad person, but what I am saying is that it is something to work at. Feel confident in yourself, but mostly if you can't feel confident in yourself, feel confident that other people want you there. And the reason they want you there is because they want you to play. Now, if somebody wants you there, but then they want to play for you, such as telling you what your character should do every round, then that's a problem that you should deal with that player, because then that player is pushing too much of their ego onto you. But it is important to recognize that it's all right to have an ego. It's okay to stand up and decide to do things yourself. If you make a mistake, people are going to be very okay with this, because we all make mistakes. If you decide that you want to take a step out and put yourself forward for this, people will appreciate it. So that's kind of helpful in that respect. Gil says there's a video of Brendan Lee Mulligan talking to Jasmine Bular? I'm afraid I don't know how to... I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce that name. About how to do min-maxing without ruining the experience at the table for everyone else. It's a good perspective to watch. Yeah, I'd say that probably is. Probably a good thing to check out. But the key of working together at the table is realizing that if you put yourself up here and you let everyone else go down here, that's the issue. And storytellers do not deserve to be higher than players. But in the same respect, storytellers shouldn't be putting themselves below players, which I see some do. And I was guilty of doing that for a time. If you start saying, I will serve them, I'm going to make sure that my players end up happy, I'm going to make sure that they always finish the session with big smiles, but then you stop caring about your own smiles, you're not really doing everyone a favor at that point. In fact, you're probably doing more harm than good. I will admit that it is very tempting sometimes to be the people pleaser, to be the one who goes out there and says, here, everybody enjoy at the expense of me. But that's not sustainable. And it also kind of makes me resent myself for what I'm doing, which is why I have to make sure that I inflate my own ego to the point where I can stand on an equal level to the other players. In case you have just joined us, just know that this is a kind of a commentary question and answer about role-playing games, whether it's online, tabletop, LARP. Throw your questions out there. We'll see if we can answer them. If you just have topics you want to discuss, you can put them out there as well. And of course, if you have any comments about what's being discussed, please, by all means, you should know that while I have been role-playing for a very long time, and while I am a professional storyteller, not professional storyteller in terms of role-playing games. I work in the video game industry as a narrative director, but my opinion is my own, and it's only one, and I'm interested in hearing yours as well. Weirdness says it's a good thing to remember. My anxiety can get in the way sometimes, and I tend to sink into the background without realizing it. I'm still having fun, but it makes everyone devote energy to making sure I'm doing okay and still involved, which taxes the group. So what I'm not trying to say is, I'm not trying to say, hey, you should step up, because if you don't, everyone else is going to be miserable. But what I am saying is that what you think might be benefiting everyone else at the table is in fact potentially dragging them down. People want you to play. I want you to play. And if I am storytelling a scene and I see that somebody is struggling to assert themselves in a scene, then I'm going to spend some energy to try to help that person. And then afterwards, I've been told by someone who's being like, oh, you didn't have to do that. I was happy to just watch. And I'm like, well, okay, but if I don't know that, then I'm going to see if I can help you. So again, a balancing act, a tough thing. As 36 says, it's a balancing act, which is why I think session zeros are super awesome. And a constant awareness from all involved is key, even before the action of communication. Yep. I mean, we often kind of fall back to talking about safety in session zero here, and that's because, funnily enough, these are still relatively new concepts, although it might not seem that way. Basically, any game that comes out now that's worth anything, often they're going to talk about safety tools and session zeros, but this wasn't even the case. I mean, even as recently as 5th edition D&D, there wasn't really an established talk of safety tools and session zeros to the point that it is today. Like, there's been a big shift, and it can't be the only thing we discuss though on this channel. We do have other things to worry about. That's not just talking about safety, but at any rate, I did post, so I forgot to post about the Daggerheart review, or not review, but first impressions that I did a while ago. I whiffed. I completely whiffed that. I am embarrassed because I recorded it specifically so that we could post it, and then I didn't. And so now that I have posted it, we haven't sort of seen, there's been no comments on it, but what I've been thinking about it a lot, and the problem is that I'm just happy with the campaign that I'm playing now. So I don't really feel the need to step out and do something else. But Erwin says, I've definitely experienced games where a player benefited hugely, favoritism, and that scraped against the fun and egos of the other players. The responses varied from stewing silently to pushing forward despite not having fun, just to make sure the game continues. It's a hard thing to address because it's a critique of both the GM and another player. Favoritism is real tough. And part of the reason why it's real tough is because it's something that happens consciously and subconsciously. And there's even a reverse to it, where out of fear of showing favoritism, you end up being harder on somebody else. Sometimes this takes the place of people who are in romantic relationships at a table. Oh, my boyfriend is here, and so I'm going to slip my boyfriend some extra stuff during the game because, wink. Or, hey, my girlfriend's here, and I don't want to make anyone think that I'm giving her special treatment, so I'm going to kind of go against her character concept and make things harder for her just because I don't want to seem like I'm doing the favoritism thing. And both things are pretty hard to completely eliminate because we're social creatures and we want to be seen as liked and desired. And whether it's that you want your current beau to be the one who likes you, or whether you want everyone else at the table to be the ones who like you, it's a hard thing to get rid of. And then if you stream games, you also have the audience to deal with as well. The audience can be shown favoritism, or alternately, the audience can be shown the opposite. So that is a difficulty that we are sometimes presented with. And some of that is ego too, as well, right? But in Flower of August, that's a great example. Bob's a pretty bad loser, so I better make sure his ego isn't bruised too hard while we play to avoid a night-ending episode from him. I have experienced this mostly in LARP play, where we will say, oh, well, this is what we should do, but we won't because we know that the player's going to have a bad reaction to it, and then possibly cause a scene. And not cause a scene like a scene in a role-playing game, but a scene as in a blow-up. I have had situations where in a LARP, I had one player who really coordinated well. It was a master class of backstabbing. This person had developed alliances across many different player factions because they wanted to take down this one big player. A player who'd been involved in the game since almost the beginning, and that player had established a very good power base. And then what it came down to was this player executed their plan, and a different storyteller, not me, but another storyteller at the game blocked it. Basically said it doesn't work. So a plan that this person had been working on for a month, and said, no, it doesn't work. And worse yet, exposed this player's plan so that then the target knew and therefore took swift, merciless retribution on this player. And this happened when I was dealing with a different subset of players in another location, so I was not present for it. And then afterwards I came back, I was like, how did it go? He said, oh, it failed for this reason. And I said, but why? Why did it happen this way? And the storyteller said, well, because we're playing in this guy's home, the target's home. Happened to have he and his roommates shared a large apartment that had access to a backyard and access to a park as well. I said, well, we're playing in his home, and if he gets mad and his character gets screwed over, he might quit, and then we won't have a place to play. Woof. Difficult situation, because I'm not certain that this storyteller was wrong. It's possible that had the plan been executed the way that I had anticipated it would be, the way, if we were being fair, it would have been, then that player would have been pissed and then picked up their ball and gone home. That's very possible. But it really wasn't fair. And it damaged the integrity of the game. And it made for, not all the players, but for some of them, they felt honestly pretty bad. And their plans were shot. And that was a thing that they were trying to accomplish. But that was favoritism. This storyteller showed favoritism to the target because the target had control over something, a location, which we found very valuable, and we didn't want to give up. And that's not an easy situation to get over. Uninspired Twitch name asks, couldn't anyone tell the scheming player well in advance what was up? No one chose to. No one did. I didn't, because I assumed that the plan would go off. I wasn't trying to protect the target. What should I have? I don't know. Because then it became a question of, let's say that we did let the plan go through and the target did get angry and then the target did quit the game and therefore we lost our space to play. Now, we could have found another space. It would have been possible. It would have been a logistical problem, but we could have done it. We might not have found as good a place, but we would have found something. And therefore, the story integrity is maintained. A player who's kind of a crybaby gets to remove themselves from the game, but we suffer a little bit as a group. And the storytellers, being also the ones who were the logistics people in terms of this game, would have also suffered a bit greater. Or we let the integrity of the story and the integrity of the rules suffer because there was a block. Well, worse. Today, if I were doing this, now, thankfully, I'm in a position where I control the space in which we play, right? It's my office, so I'm not that worried about pissing somebody off that much. But I also now choose to play with people who I don't think this would be an issue with. And if it would be an issue, now we have tools that we can use to discuss it. But I still regret not letting the plan go through. I would have rather take my chances of talking to the target afterwards and saying like, yeah, it sucks, but we're going to work with you to create a new character. We're going to get you back on your feet. We're going to give you an opportunity to do something that you hadn't thought of before. It'll be great. I would have rolled the dice on that. As everyone says, definitely run into that. You appease one player because if they quit, maybe another player, a romantic partner or best friend who isn't an issue, will leave too. Yeah, very much so. And then you run into a situation where I think I've spoken about this on a Clinic Hours a long time ago. This was a changeling LARP that I was running with a couple of other friends of mine. And it was at its peak, it was a large scale LARP. It had about 30 people in it, which is large scale for a parlor LARP of the kind that we were playing, right? We weren't trying to do like huge convention style things. We were playing once every 2 weeks, but we also would run side scenes in between, and we had a forum online where people could run scenes between games kind of thing. Like it was sort of like a social hub for all of these players. Like everybody was into it. And at one point, one of the storytellers had created an NPC who was the freeholder. In Changeling, people tend to congregate in places called freeholds, and so she was the leader of this freehold, and she was in a romantic relationship with another character in the game. And then this other character got challenged to a duel. I was running the duel. These two characters went off into a field, and I addressed both players, and I was like, okay, here's the deal. I know that you're both looking to fight, but it looks like you're intending to use lethal force, which could mean that one of your characters is going to die. Are you okay with this? Both of them looked at me and said, yes, this is what we want. We played it out, and a character is killed. And we were running this side scene at a university. And so I go over to a club space in this university. Everybody sort of congregated there about 5 minutes after it happened. And I said, yeah, this is what happened. And then my fellow storyteller was like, no, it isn't. That's not what happened. And I said, well, I just played it out. I just did it. Everybody's in agreement, including the player who's dead. Because that player was also fine with their character dying. And she was like, nope, that's not what would happen. Here's what would happen. My NPC would realize that her oath of True Hearts no longer applied. So she would have immediately cast Chronos 5 several times to reverse time enough so that then she could show up and interrupt the duel and make sure that it never happened. And I said, that's not fair. Like, that means that your character, first of all, what she said was not really within the context of the rules, but storyteller fiat. But also, like, what you're implying that you can do here is busting such an insane amount of magic for such a small amount of chance at success. And she's like, no, but it will succeed. I'm not letting this character die, because if this character dies, then I don't want to play anymore. I let it happen. I'm not proud of it, but I let it happen because then I was like, oh, I don't want to lose this other storyteller. And like, she was just like really like going for this. And I was like, okay, I guess it could track like that. And then it was reversed. And the player whose character won the duel was pissed. The character who had lost the duel, that player was kind of also like, but I was excited about doing something. I guess that's fine. Like he was like, yeah, I guess it follows within the rules. And I was just sidelined by all of this. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't let my own ego go up. And it was awkward. It was awkward because it was essentially a storyteller saying, if I don't get what I want, I'm going to pick up my ball and go home. And I said, okay, and I put up with it. And it hurt the integrity of the game. And then a rumor basically went throughout the player base that like, you cannot do something that would piss off this storyteller, because if you do, she'll find a way to reverse it. She'll find a way to stop it. So a lot of the players who were acting against this freeholder abandoned their plans because they were like, there's no way that we can win because she's just not going to let us win. So we'll find another thing to do. And they kept playing and they had fun, but probably less fun than they would have. And she was popular. She was a very popular person, not the character. The storyteller was a popular person in our social group. So it was kind of easy for her to get away with things in that respect as well. So ego, it'll kick you in the ass. I still regret that. Look, there's a lot of things that I regret about my storytelling career. I mean, like I've been at this for a very long time and I've had my fair share of things absolutely screw up on me, and it was because it was my fault. So that's annoying. But as 36 says, with LARPs, there are even more people and therefore more egos involved than in tabletops, so more difficult. That's one of the main issues with LARPs, is that if you have 200 players as opposed to 5, well, it's the bigger egos that are going to stand out. It's the ones who will make a big effort who will often be the ones who get the most done. Because there just isn't as many people around to try to like hyper focus on making sure that everybody has an equal amount of fun. It just doesn't happen. It is one of the disadvantages of LARP play. The big egos tend to be the ones that get the most out of it, which is too bad, but it also is the way that it goes sometimes. Storyteller's the regret. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm also the kind of guy who at one point handed out bonus experience because I didn't have any money and somebody was like, I can buy you lunch. And I was like, oh, okay. If you do, I'll give you a couple of extra experience for your character. And he was like, sure. And then that happened multiple times. And that was really, really fucking shitty of me to do. Just like, I have a physical reaction to thinking about that after the fact. It's bad. It was really bad. In the end, was it game breaking? No, not really. I wasn't giving out so much experience that the character got significantly more powerful than everyone else. I basically gave this person the equivalent of, in total, like 2 extra sessions worth of experience out of like 30 to 50 sessions. So not any significant percentage, but it's still shitty. It's still really bad. Holy fuck. Well, did I feel really stupid when I realized just how absolutely shitty I was in doing that. Oh, it's fine. Okay. So yeah. As much as I can point to other storytellers and be like, I think you fucked up, I definitely fucked up. I fucked up myself. In fact, it's a weird thing. My price is a sandwich. Yeah, apparently it is. If we're talking about ego, in that first large-scale LARP that I ran, that Changeling LARP, I started it And I asked a few friends of mine to help out at first, and then they were like, yeah, we want to be storytellers, because at first it was a one-shot. And then people were like, no, we had a lot of fun. We should make this a regular game. And I'm like, okay, well, we can do that. And then the people who I'd asked to help me out, I was like, do you want to run this game with me? And they said yes. And the problem is I had way more experience even at that time running games than they did. And by way more experience, I mean like I had a few years and they had never done it before. So I kind of settled into the role of head storyteller, but then partway through the game, they started being like, well, why do you make decisions? And then we don't, like, you haven't asked us, you didn't consult with us. And that's because my storytelling style is very improvisational. I will come up with an idea and I'll be like, yeah, that idea is good. And I go ahead and I do it. And I don't talk about it with other people, which I was like, oh yeah, no, okay, that's fair. And they started implying that the NPC that I played the most often was too powerful. And there was a joke that, like, if you looked at his character sheet, it would look like somebody just spilled ink all over it. And I was like, well, no, he's got built-in weaknesses. The point is that the players discover his weaknesses, then they can start overcoming them and they can start doing what they want. And they were like, oh, well, that's still not good enough. He's still way too good at everything. You're just trying to stroke your own ego by playing this character. So I said, okay, and I killed that NPC. I let players kill him. Or engineer a point where he was just like, okay, I will die. And he went off and he died. And then I was replaced. But I was replaced with an NPC who ended up being more powerful than mine. The same NPC who rescued her lover by just like blowing cantrips all over the place in a very questionable way. But then also, I got relegated. Two of the storytellers were romantic partners, and they talked about the game a lot without me. Because naturally they were, hanging out together. So they would talk about game. I don't think they necessarily did it consciously. Maybe they did. Definitely one of them would have it more out for me than the other one. So I would show up to game and they'd be like, okay, well, this is what's happening. We've already determined what's happening. This, and this. And I'd be like, well, and they'd say, no time to argue. Game is starting. We got to go. And then they'd go out and they'd do their thing. And so my ego just dropped. I didn't feel like I could have an effect in the game. So I started focusing on tiny storylines that involve players who were not as active. I tried to focus on that, tried to say, that's how I'm going to participate in this game. I'm going to be there for the people who aren't involved in the main storyline. And so it ended up actually working out, but my own ego just absolutely got shattered at that point, and I stopped pushing for myself there. Communication with your other storytellers, very important, but also establishing rules and boundaries. Even today, right now, like there's other projects that I every once in a while think of and what can I do and what will be done. And then there's this option of like, okay, so do we have, if I get involved with another group now, if I get involved with another group of people who will also be helping run the game, I'm now very conscientious about making sure that there's an established hierarchy. Or if there is no hierarchy, making sure that that's established, that there is no head. But I'm now very careful of that because I'm also like, I don't want there to be resentment after the fact. And I want there to be a clear choice. Like when we were running Disconcordia, I was not the head storyteller, but I was the person who was the head in terms of rules adjudication because I knew the rules better than everyone else. And then I also ended up doing some of the storylines. I ended up being the one who would sort of take them over because I was the one who originated the universe, right? Because it was set in the universe of Changeling the Streaming. And so the other storytellers naturally were a bit more hesitant to like have things happen that would affect that universe because they still felt like players in that universe to a certain extent. So we had to just maintain constant communication about that. Everyone says, presses fingers together. So, someone I know is currently in a game with a player who in the past few months has become unable to tolerate failure or difficulty in game. They complain if a dice roll isn't perfect. They complain if a scene doesn't go the way they want. They complain if they don't understand what's going on. They complain if they miss something because they weren't listening. The GM seems to be suffering health issues from stress over it. And their romantic partners. Help. Woof. I assume that you mean that this player is romantic partners with the GM. That makes it even worse. Kung Fu Fender says maybe underlying insecurities. It is probably not the game, but a need that needs to be fulfilled. You need to talk about these things in their relationship because this is stress caused by their connection. So has this problem only shown up in the past few months? Like, was it originally this was okay, and then it got worse at some point? And the moment that it got worse, was there an inciting incident? Like, was that the point that the player and the GM started to get together? Or has it always kind of been a problem? It's just been getting worse? I've been doing a lot of talking this week. I had to do a lot of presentations, and presentations that involved me basically talking faster than I'm talking now, nonstop for hours on end. So I am glad that I have water with me. So from others, this problem player never behaved this way in prior games. It started with the recent game, which began earlier this year. Okay. You know how I tend to end these streams by saying, like, it's one of the hardest things that you can do, but often the best case is to use your word hole? Well, there's a problem with that. Is that sometimes using your word hole is too hard, and we get worried about the risks that it can cause. If I open up my mouth, it might mean the game will collapse. If I open up my mouth, it might mean that my relationship will collapse. So there's a few things that you can do. The first thing that you can do is, it sounds kind of stupid and self-serving, but you can introduce more or different safety rules in your game. Safety rules that are designed to codify how somebody needs to complain about a situation. So, for instance, if you were to use these, then what I would do then is I'd say, okay, we're going to try this safety thing. I would let it happen for a game or two. Then I would see what was happening. Because if a player was constantly doing one of these and being like, I don't understand what's going on, or I feel like things are going badly for me, then sometimes in using the context of a safety tool, people can realize how often it's happening. But the other thing is that other players can bring up issues. And if you have safety tools in place, then those safety tools give you permission to talk about things. Like you can toss up a safety card and you can say, like, I understand that the scene isn't going the way that you want, but I feel like it's important for the story. Or I feel like I have to repeat myself a lot. So I'm wondering what we can do to help other people understand what I'm trying to say. And sometimes just having the sort of the gift of having these cards around is one way to help, because then you can at least point to the cards and say, well, you know, I have this card, and if I use it, then it gives me a little bit of an help. It's an assistance tool that I can use. Instead of just me opening my mouth and saying, what's your problem? I can say, I feel like I have to repeat myself a lot. What can we do to fix this? Or these scenes, I get the impression that you're not happy with how a lot of these scenes are going, and I want to know what's wrong. How can we fix this? Because if you also directly address somebody and say, it seems like you're unhappy and I want to help you become happy. Well, if the first thing that they say is, no, everything's fine, I'm having a great time, then you can say, okay, but it seems like when you fail a roll, you get upset, or when a scene doesn't go your way, you get upset. So I'm trying to address this. Instead of it saying, you're doing something that's pissing me off, put it as, I see that there's a problem and I'd like to know how we can fix it. Present it as a solution-oriented situation as opposed to an accusation on someone's character. I haven't discussed spirits yet, Kung Fu Fenris. I will likely get to that, but that hasn't come up yet. But in bringing it up as opposed to it being like, you're the fucking problem, even if everybody knows that they're the problem, bringing it up as, I see that there's something and I'd love to be able to solve it. The only thing that you can't do if that happens is that if everybody at the table is like, no, but everything's fine. No, it's not. That's not, don't accept the answer of, no, everything's okay, if you know that everything isn't okay. That's kind of then tacitly saying, well, then it's okay for you to complain and it's okay for me to put up with it. To put something out there in terms of, but I am feeling this, is a problem. Things like positioning it as, sometimes like, is the game, like, do you feel like the game is too difficult? Because it seems like when you fail a roll, you get upset. I could lower the difficulty, but also I'm worried that if the game becomes too easy, then everyone's going to be bored. So then you're presenting it in terms of, I want to find a solution, but here's the reason why I don't necessarily just want to give in to doing whatever you want to do. Flower Vaga says, can't introducing safety tools be hard sometimes, though, in terms of talking about ego? Isn't there a risk a person might find the suggestion means you consider them weak or that you don't feel safe around them? Yeah, that is a problem. But this is one of those situations where how best to... I can give you an example then. I was involved with a play a long time ago, but I was involved with a play. It was a new play that was being rehearsed, and I was cast in the role of the, let's call him the antagonist. It was a play about a bunch of people who were locked in a museum, and the museum had these special doors that closed that meant that it was impossible to escape. And it was because, in fact, there had been like a nuclear bomb dropped outside. And so therefore people were trapped in this museum for weeks on end, waiting for help. And it dealt with like the psychological trauma of a whole bunch of people being locked in one space where they couldn't escape and dwindling resources. And I will give a warning here. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but I'll say that my character had to do some pretty despicable things, including inappropriate sexual touching. And I was not comfortable with what I was being asked to do. Straight up. I was just like, this is gross. Like, I don't want to do this. And I don't feel like it's making the play better. And I'm getting no support. Because one of the things is that it's one thing to care about somebody, because like there was no nudity on stage, but it's definitely, it feels gross to be an aggressor in that situation. Like it's genuinely emotionally awful. And, you know, people were not paying attention to my own needs in that respect. And I brought it up at one point, and then there was just this like immediate, like, well, I don't see what the problem is. Like, you know, like I get it. It's not an issue. And I was like, oh, damn it. Maybe I shouldn't say anything again because it's not right for me to come up with this. And then I brought it up again, and then a bunch of the other actors were like, yeah, we're not okay either. And the play got canceled. Straight up. They just ended the rehearsal process because it was clear that the play didn't have enough to it to respect the performers in it. It was asking a lot of us for reasons that then the director and the playwright could not adequately explain. When it comes to safety tools, this is one of those situations where if somebody is not feeling great about them, then you have to make it clear that it's not about them, it's about you. And that's the ego thing that comes into play here. When Kate used her safety tools last session, it wasn't about me. It was about her. It was about her saying, I'm not comfortable with this and I would like to have it fixed. And then it was something that we could then do. If I'm introducing safety tools to the game, it's not because I don't trust the other players. It's because I want to make sure that I'm okay. And I insist that when I play in a game now, I get to have something like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be these tools. But there's got to be something. I don't do tightrope walking anymore without a net underneath me. And that's important enough that it's worth it, because then if somebody was like, well, if we're playing with safety tools, I'm not playing, then my response is good, because I don't want to play with you at that point. Like at that issue, I no longer want to do it at all. We introduced these safety cards partway through a campaign. And we introduced them because I ran a session that did not directly violate anybody's sensibilities, but there were definitely points where I had players who were like, it's getting close to where I'm not terribly comfortable with what's going on here. And then they spoke to me about it, and we as a group decided that no, maybe we needed to start using safety tools. Yeah, there was a safety card last session, but it was completely fine. KFF, that's kind of what prompted this, was that Kate had a minor point, that's something that I had done, maybe crossing a line. And I knew in my head that it wasn't crossing a line, but I also knew that it wasn't worth my own ego to try to defend the action. So I retconned it, and it was completely fine. The whole thing was resolved within like 30 seconds. But that's something that I would have to say is, yep, you're going to run into resistance, and you will have some people who will say like, well, I don't want to use these safety tools because I don't want my stuff to get called out or criticized. But the answer is that safety tools are to protect you. They're not to accuse other players. It's to protect myself. Look, I'm 40 years old. I've been role-playing for most of my life. I've been doing this for a very long time. I stream my games. I've run LARPs, big and small. I wrote a web series about role-playing. I had that web series. I helped make it. You know, like, I've been involved in the role-playing community for a very long time. I'm not comfortable doing this without safety tools anymore. But I also think that the safety tools have made my games better. And I don't play with people who don't use them at this point. So, yeah, I'm very sympathetic to there being defensiveness, and I'm sympathetic to players being like, well, what the fuck? But you know what? Blame me. Go into a game and be like, I was watching a stream with some bald jackass who was talking about how important safety cards are, and that makes his game so much better. And now I think we should use them. And honestly, I really feel like it's important for me that we use them. And if people are like, but we don't want to, then say, well, it's really important to me. And if it's not important to you, then I guess I can't play with you anymore. Make it about you, but then just make it about me. Because there aren't games without safety tools that are major releases anymore. You know, you go into any of the major publishers who are releasing the game today, all of them talk safety tools because they're that important. And you can always ask, like, hey, so, you know, if this particular safety tool isn't for you because maybe it feels like it's a bit too much, just go with an X card. Just be like, hey, there's an X card on the table. Let's put it there. Let's do that. Or just say, as a safety tool, I just want to say, like, hey, if I raise my hand and say that I just need to talk, is that okay? But have something. Don't play without them if you don't feel safe with it. It's kind of like how if I ride a bike, I wear a helmet. And I've been riding a bike for almost all my life, and I don't ride bikes unsafely, but I wear a helmet because I don't know if I'm going to be riding along and then a car hits me, or if I'm riding along and then my bike will go into a rut in the road completely outside of my control, and then I have to bail on the bike. It's not about my skill as a rider. It's about my desire to not have my brain scrambled out on the pavement. But one of the things that we have thought about doing every once in a while was to make a video about this. It's one of the things that at one point we were wondering about fundraising for it, is to make a video just about safety tools, to introduce these safety tools in particular, but safety tools overall, to make it a little bit funny, to do it as a proper production where we would hire, like, you know, proper equipment, proper sound, proper cameras, a director, you know, get a group of people who could really do it honestly and truly well, and then be able to make the video so that people could watch it and be like, oh yeah, okay, yes, I should be using safety tools in our campaign, so that then we could have a chance to, against the people who are like, well, I don't want to do this. It's still something that's kicking around in our heads. The thing is that we were thinking about doing this and then COVID happened and we sort of dropped the ball on it, but it is still something that we're thinking about. 36 says, getting the talk going made everyone more involved about several sensibilities, and peeps are much more considerate towards each other without their egos getting hurt, because the growing understanding is that it is not a personal attack. And I think that the ball needed to be Lysoled. And I think that that's a key point about the safety tools that we have. If you go on our website and you look up our safety tools, one of the things that we say is that these cards aren't about assigning guilt. A card being used does not usually mean that someone has done something wrong. You shouldn't avoid using a card because you're worried others may feel guilty, just as you shouldn't take offense if someone else uses a card. Role-playing carries a certain level of emotional risk. The cards are there so that people can feel safe, not judged. Now, again, this goes back to what I was discussing earlier about design being a difficult thing and being able to like condense text into a small, easily understandable type of thing. We say everyone should have a set of cards. Having your own set of cards makes them easier to use. They'll always be within reach, and they'll be as familiar to you as your other gaming supplies. And we mean everyone. Safety is crucial for those running games too. We make it clear that you have to use cards. Cards are always out of character, and to avoid false alarms. Avoiding false alarms is one of those things that we're really careful of, which is also why we stopped using, because when we were running Disconcordia, we had our safety tools as Discord emotes. And in fact, if you used a safety card, it would ping storytellers so that we could know where to go to help out. But for a while, people were using the play card to acknowledge that they'd seen a message. And then eventually we said we'd rather that people stop doing that and use a check mark instead. And the reason why is because we didn't want people to be using safety cards for purposes that they weren't intended for. So, hey, Blair Wolf. Happy Friday. But yeah, so in general, Aragorn, to kind of wrap it up, for this particular situation, what I would do is don't make it about the problem player, make it about the storyteller, about the GM. Say, I'm worried that the game might be too hard because it seems like people are getting upset over dice rolls, or I'm worried that scenes aren't necessarily serving everybody's fun. Can we talk about this just because I want to make sure that things are going okay? But most of all, the GM can always say, I'm not happy with how things are going. Not, I think you're unhappy. Because the instant that you start pointing a finger at somebody, it becomes a lot harder to have that productive discussion. If you do end up having to point the finger at somebody, maybe that means that there's an actual problem and somebody shouldn't be playing. But that's a harder thing to figure out. Also, I'm totally changing my Discord status, Aragorn. Don't worry. I'm going to take care of that right now. Because honestly, that's just too good. Set custom status to done. The Helldivers news, Kung Fu Fighters, you mean that now PC players will have to have PSN accounts? They're going to start enforcing that? Yeah, not great for those who are PC players and who enjoy that sort of thing. Mostly I feel badly for people for whom they can't get PSN accounts because the regions don't support it, which means they won't be able to play the game anymore. But I don't play Helldivers. Maybe I should. People have said good things about it, but I am going to talk now briefly. People asked questions about Werewolf the Apocalypse, so I'm going to answer this briefly, but if you have any questions yourself that you want to throw out here, or any anecdotes or whatever that you want to share, by all means, swing on by with them, just throw them in chat. But for now, one of the things that was brought up here on our Discord channel was a question, which was question on Werewolf the Apocalypse cosmology. The spirits from Montreal by Moonlight, which is our 5th edition campaign, seem to be both universal and particular in that they're tied to the mountain and they're linked to concepts. To contrast with Exalted, the spirits are local, but they're fox, goose, etc., not Foxel, god of foxes and Canadian sneakery, which is the kind of format I'd expect for Exalted gods. Alad is the god of war and cattle in the south, for example, while Werewolf, they feel more universal, but still bound to local concerns. How is that tension reconciled in the broader cosmology? Are there just a lot of fox/goose/etc. spirits, and they're all called the same and have similar personalities? Is there something else going on entirely? So Kung Fu Fenris' answer here was, it's up to interpretation. The specific spirits can be distinct identities, but still be a fragment of a greater conceptual spirit. Personally, I'd give spirits names, so the goose on the mountain is different from the goose on the bay, but are also the same spirits in a lot of ways. So the easiest way to put it is, in terms of the game that I'm running, the spirit of, say, Stag. Stag is a big deal spirit. I'm not using the official names because most people won't recognize them anyway, but Stag is a big deal spirit. But Stag can appear as lesser spirits in different locations and places, as kind of like an offshoot of that original Stag, a fraction of it. So they might introduce themselves as Stag, but you might also be more accurate in referring to Stag from the mountain or the like. But the other thing, the real answer, there's lots of great stuff in that Stag Light, right? 1 calorie. There's lots of great stuff in that Discord conversation, so I'd recommend going and reading that because a lot of it's been covered quite well. But the easiest thing that I'll also say here is that I fudge things because on a stream I have limited time. Our game sessions start at 2 p.m. Local time, and they end at 5. 5 is when I end the session typically, and then there's like a 10-minute sort of aftercare, and then we end. But we also have like 20 minutes beforehand as everybody's sort of showing up, and we deal with experience and kind of relaxing into the game. And then we have a break in the middle. So it's actually more like 2.5 hours that we play total. In 2.5 hours, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going into minutia. Especially minutiae that aren't critically important to understanding the story. The situation. Thanks, uninspired Twitch name. Good luck with your plane. So mostly I gloss over some things because I just don't feel like I want to take the time to do it. I don't find that it makes for an interesting stream. To get into those bits, because we can always discuss it later on our Discord. So that's what I ended up doing. 36 says, wasn't aware that you got pinged by every safety card use in Disconcordia. We weren't pinged by play cards. We were only pinged by pauses and stops. But we still wanted people to get used to the idea of using the cards in appropriate manners. Because the thing is, asking, have you read this? And if people said this, then the answer is, I've read it, I agree with it, I'm enthusiastically consenting to it. But that's not always what we were asking. Sometimes it was just, we just want to know if you've seen it. We don't necessarily need to know if you agree with it. And so therefore using the play card wouldn't have been appropriate. It was a minor quibble overall, but we just wanted to sort of get that idea of safety cards should be used for safety purposes, not for overall general purposes. And it's why we also don't have the safety cards as emotes in our server. Because we don't want the audience to use the cards in careless ways. Yeah, that's making an assumption on our part, basically saying like, oh, we don't trust you to not use the emotes, but like we also don't want you to subscribe to our channel and then get access to emotes that you can't use unless bad things are happening. That wouldn't be very fun. So instead we put different emotes in there for you. But really what we're trying to make sure of is we didn't want somebody to kind of have like jokey uses of the pause or the stop cards, because then much like pulling a fire alarm for no reason, it reduces awareness or readiness in that respect. So that is one of the issue. Zabuka, yeah, every town can have their own potential Virgin Mary. Every town can have their own potential incarnation of goose or stag or the like. They all kind of report back to the original spirit. So, yeah. So just in terms of my answer there, the answer is go check the Discord, but the real answer is I don't get into such deep questions on stream because that's not really useful. Flower of August saying respect for keeping the safety tools a serious thing. Yeah. As much as it would have been cool to be able to say, yeah, here, look, you have the emotes. The problem is then if you go into another role-playing stream and you use our emotes, then the people on stream might not notice or understand or care about what they are. And so therefore it's like using a fire extinguisher and you press the button, like you press down and nothing comes out. It doesn't have any effect. You have the tool, but it's not doing anything. And we don't want that either. A lot of people who role play online also, they aren't necessarily paying attention to chat. They're paying attention to their game. Which is fine. That's the way that they choose to do things. We very much know it's an unspoken open secret that we specifically don't do a lot of things that we could do in order to increase our audience or our social reach, and we don't do them because we don't feel like it, because it's not the kind of thing that we want to do. And one of the things that we do is we have chat. We have chat. One day for clinic hours, possibly soon, instead of running it on this machine, I'm going to run it on my phone, and I'll take you for a tour of the studio to show things and kind of show what it's like when you're sitting in my position versus when you're sitting in the player's positions. But we have an old flat screen television. It doesn't really work very well. Its image is fine. It's not great, but its image is fine. It doesn't do sound very well, and it's got some input lag. But what it's perfect for is it lets our players see themselves so that they can tell if they're like shifting off frame or whatever. They can see what stats are being shown to the stream because they can see what's basically being put out. But also they can see chat. And we read and respond to chat, which interrupts game. And not everybody likes that, but we do. So that's handy. Yes, Erwin, you can have access to the emojis to add to your Discord server. Again, rpgclinic.com/safety, and you can find them and you can use them. It's all free. Yes, Kung Fu Fenders, you were basically completely right. So that's really the key point there. But we also don't play D&D. If we played D&D, we'd get so much more visibility. Because people tend not to search tabletop role-playing games. They tend to search for D&D. But we don't want to play D&D, so we don't. We could be taking clips of our game sessions and putting them online and uploading our fun things as YouTube shorts or TikToks, and we don't. Because discoverability on Twitch is ass, and it's a lot better on other platforms, but we don't. We just don't do those things. Because that's not what we do. It's not what we consider fun. We consider having an audience fun. What we're not trying to do is, blow up. If we ever did, I'm not sure that we'd necessarily be against it, but it's just not our focus. We're not trying to make this our job. Imagining the chaos of hundreds of people chatting, though, is a big nope. Yeah, well, there is that as well. We like the community that we have. We like being able to have that sort of tightness and closeness here. So that's why we're kind of less focused on that. And we go to a little more effort to certain things that other people might not necessarily care about, but it matters to us. We try to play in person as much as we can. And a lot of people don't. And that's because it's sometimes difficult to get everybody together. Sometimes it's logistically impossible because people live all over the country or all over the continent or all over the world, and therefore they can't meet in the same location. Or people are, they just don't feel like it. They don't want to have to leave their homes, so they sit in front of their computer to play. Again, totally fine. Not our preference. We prefer to have people in the same room. We feel like that's better for our role-playing. We feel like it makes for a better stream. we invest in our microphones and we invest in our cameras and we invest in our lights because we want to look good on stream, to make it interesting for people to actually sit there and watch us instead of just listen. But these aren't necessarily things that make our streams better. It makes our enjoyment of our streams better, right? Kate puts a lot of effort into the tech that goes into these streams because, we think it makes her the stream better. But honestly, it's because that's something that interests Kate to do. She enjoys doing it, and we enjoy having a good looking stream that way. But that's not really what's going to gain us viewers. So, that's also kind of where we have there. One of the things that we're always trying to look for, though, is we do want people to be introduced to us. We want new people to be coming in because, as all communities everywhere, there is naturally going to be attrition. There's people who will stop having time to tune in. Maybe it's because they have a life event that occurs. They get a new job and their schedules change. They move and the time zone doesn't work anymore. Maybe they lose interest and so they just stop tuning in. Maybe they find a streamer that they prefer and so they'll watch them instead. Maybe we do something that pisses them off. One of our community, somebody who we really liked quite a bit, we still do, honestly, stopped watching. And as far as I can tell, the reason why is because we were playing a game that he was boycotting. Not because of us, but because he was protesting something that the publisher had done. And, so we lost him, and that was too bad. Like, we really liked that guy. But the reality is that you will lose people. And if you do lose people, that means you have to gain new people, because otherwise then eventually you go down to zero. There does have to be a certain critical mass of people in order to make it worth it. So that's why we like to have people kind of join us and tune in, but we don't need it to be, 400 people. We don't need to be partnered. Honestly, I don't have time to be a Twitch partner. I know one person and one person only who is a Twitch partner who also works a job similar to mine. And I don't think this person needs sleep, so that helps. The thing is that we are kind of streaming for you, but our number one rule internally is that we stream because we want to, because we enjoy it, and we're not going to stream something that we don't enjoy just because we think that our audience would. Because first of all, I don't think that's sustainable. I think eventually the audience would get caught on to the fact that we aren't actually enjoying ourselves, but also because that's not why we do it. We're not trying to blow up. We're already in the top X% of Twitch streams. Most Twitch streams, sadly, get one viewer or no viewers. People stream for a bit, they get nobody showing up, and then they stop. A lot of streams get like 4 or 5, and they consider themselves lucky, and they are. Right now we have 20 viewers. 20 viewers who are not bots. I'll put that way. And 20 is a lot. Like, it's a lot. And just because it's not 200 or 2,000 like some streamers are regularly able to get, doesn't mean that we're not kind of way up there. And so we're very, very happy with what we have. We don't have this, or at least I'm not going to talk for everybody, but I don't have a need to be so widely seen by tons of people. If there's anything that I would love to have more widespread, it's just our safety tools. I really like our safety tools. I think they work well for us, and I hope that other people get exposed to them so that they can know that they can use them for that. Gil, you're not a bot. That's the important thing. But the other thing that we also do, which is a little different, is, and I've said this several times before, I don't think the star of our stream is our game. I think the star of our stream is our players. I want you to love Liz, Scott, and Kate, not the characters that they play, not Macros and Troyan and Dante, or Braum, Sophia, and Patches, or Ray, Jorik, and Valeria, or any of the other campaigns that we've run. That's not the point. I want you to love the players. The characters, yes, I want you to enjoy the campaign. I want you to enjoy the stories that are occurring, but I want you to experience it from the experience of the players as well, because I think that's the interesting thing for me. That's the stuff that I prefer more than anything else, is to see Scott's reaction as opposed to just your own. Yeah, I appreciate that, Gil. And yeah, I'm not trying to take myself out of the equation here, but I think the audience's experience of the stream is closer to that of a player's than to that of the storytellers. I don't reveal storyteller specific information to the stream. You don't see my preparations for games, that sort of thing. That's why. That's all. I'm not trying to take myself out of the equation. Just, I think you're closer to players than storytellers in this particular circumstance, in this situation, as it were. No, still happy with how things have been going. Still enjoying things, and one of the things that I'm thrilled about though is that this campaign that we're playing right now, we check in regularly, and as a result, I know that right now people are very happy with the games that we're playing, and that's critical for me. But even better is that we also have other options for other games to play. So I'm not in a position where I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what's going to happen next. As instead, I'm more like, oh, I'm glad that we have stuff. And then I know that we have other plans if we stop enjoying what we're playing now. Because always when it comes to campaigns, I will stop playing in a campaign if I don't want to play it anymore. Same with my players. But I'll also talk with my players first, because there's things that I can do to renew my interest in a campaign instead of just straight up quitting. Quitting is, even if quitting is a last resort by definition, because once you've quit, there's nothing else that you can do, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad resort or it's a resort that you should only ever consider if all other options are exhausted. It's a very good option. Quitting is good. Quitting is excellent. Most of the time, if you're quitting, it's because you're doing something for yourself, and I think that's a good thing. As Flower of August just said, having the option to leave often makes it easier to decide not to. Campaigns never end, they just become April 1st streams. So in terms of our Changeling April Fool's Day stream, we still don't know exactly what we're going to do with that, but still love to hear your impressions on our Discord. If you have ideas of what you might like to see or not see with those, it was a thing to throw out there as an interesting little tidbit, but we'll see. The reality is that we're just enjoying Werewolf and we didn't want to stop it. That's one of the things that we all agreed to, was that yes, we'll do this April Fool's thing. We think it'll be fun, but it's not replacing our current game. And so we are not replacing our current game. Not yet, anyway. If you are just tuning in, we are taking anecdotes, questions, criticisms, anything that you want about role-playing games, whether they be online, live action, tabletop, whatever you like. I guess even technically video game RPGs, but just know that that's a different conversation than what we typically discuss on this stream. And I'm also a little bit limited in what I can say about various role-playing games. Next April 1st will have to be the Avatar characters meeting the Montreal by Moonlight crew. That would be an interesting thing. No, but we do have ideas for things, special streams in the future. I would love to do another Taskmaster. I think that was a ton of fun, and I would love to do that, but we'll see when we can arrange for time for that, because also a lot of this comes down to, like, when do we have time? It's Super Dylan. You want to go see some cool RPGs? Go check out Super Dylan, and honestly, they've got some great stuff that you can play yourself. So just Super Dylan, if you want to throw a link in there, please do. But you can also just head over to their channel, where there's tons of great stuff there as well. Gil says, my opinion, Sophia Brahman patches are all fantastic characters that deserve a great story ending. The end of Changeling the Streaming was one such end. Disconcordia was another. Even Riverwild had some moments, but I don't think the April Fool's stream gave them proper closure, and they deserve one. So here's the thing, Gil, when it comes down to is either we're going to give it closure or we're just not going to go back to it. The intention is to do what we think is fun, and we definitely want to hear from you. So, like, that's a very valid opinion, and I love hearing it, and I think it would be cool to give closure to that particular story. I just don't know whether it overrides our need to play other games at this time. But the cool stuff, the good stuff, as it were, when it comes to those sorts of streams, is whether people are interested in seeing that through. Because the other thing that we kind of realized as we played that is, oh, we're having fun with this. Oh, this system isn't what we want to play anymore. It's amazing how quickly the 5th edition system has just made things better. And at one point, Kate's like, well, I guess we could adapt Changeling to a 5th edition system, and then we'd be able to do it that way. And then there's issues of, yeah, but then you're porting characters over to another system, and characters are inevitably tied to the narrative system and game systems that they are part of before. Plus, that's a shit ton of work to coordinate that and figure out all the edge cases and uses and all that. Whew. It would be rough, but it is possible, I suppose. Music today is a real vibe. The music is actually the same music that plays on most other RPG Clinic streams. We have one playlist, which we call Chill Vibes, which is through Epidemic Sound, and it goes in the same order each time. Right now, the track that is playing is called Hurt You Anymore by Klinger, CLNGR. It is a synth pop, dance pop that is categorized as dreamy and restless. You got a conversion document for that? Yeah, the thing is, though, conversion documents are conversion documents. We ran into this problem then when we were running Exalted Witch Academy. We started with Exalted 3rd Edition rules and moved over to Exalted Essence, and then all players reported immense dissatisfaction because their characters suddenly couldn't do the same things that they could do before. Even though, yeah, they gained some new powers that they couldn't have before, they were just like, these don't feel like the same characters. Even something as small as, I used to be able to roll 15 dice, get 5 successes, and feel good about it. If that then changes to, well, now I only get to roll 7 dice and get 3 successes, and it's the same amount, like this, it's the same result, but now it feels different, and therefore my character feels weird. That kind of dissonance can really mess with your noodle. So conversion kits aren't necessarily what we're looking for, but I mean, we can try. I would like to see the conversion document. I would be interested to see it, just to have a look for myself. I have my own thoughts about these sorts of designs. My unfortunate thing is that if I start redesigning things, I would start changing shit. Like I would be like, okay, like for instance, one of the things that we did in the April Fool's stream, this is going to be a very minor spoiler if you're still have yet to see that stream. So I'm going to raise my hand, and until I put it down, you should know that you could be spoiled. It's only going to be a sentence or two. I removed ... Okay, spoiler incoming. I removed the chimerical health track because I don't think I hate that part of the game design, and I would try to change it at a changeling immediately. My conversion would be more than a conversion. I would add and remove certain arts. Hell, for Disconcordia, I made huge changes to some of the arts as part of our house rules, and they still exist. And part of the reason I did that is because there are still arts that could be abused. So I changed them. I will freely admit that I would not be able to make a conversion. I would have to work on a 5th edition entirely, and I don't know if I have the time. Plus, I don't particularly want to do the work and not get paid for it. That's not me being like, oh yes, I deserve to be paid for my work, which frankly everybody deserves to get paid for their work, but just because I work enough that I don't then want to do a side project that would take over a huge part of my free time and then just see no compensation for it, and then also probably not get much of an audience either. So Zabuka says, I recall seeing some TikTokers talk about using different lightweight or very specific games with the same characters for different parts of a story, where Exalted 3rd Edition or Exalted Essence is very small in comparison. Wonder why it works for them. The issue... Oh, I mean, like, I would totally work on the team with it. I would even not necessarily work for... as like I wouldn't need a huge salary. I would want to make sure that my work was getting exposure and compensation if I was going to sink hundreds and hundreds of hours into it. Similar to LARPs, for instance. But I think that some of it, Zablica, is that it depends on the kind of players that you have and what kind of attachment they have to rules. And I seem to have players who have a decent attachment to crunch. It seems odd to say because we're very much about role-playing. We want like rich stories in our games, and romance is a big thing, and you know, people are shipping all over the place, and Aragorn has admiralty and directs ships, and we have Alispot who has spreadsheets involving who may or may not smooch. But my players really like crunch, but they like specific crunch. But that crunch matters to them in a lot of ways. And I'm very sensitive to game and narrative systems intermingling because that's what I do for a living. So I'm not thrilled always when crunch does not fit the narrative. I get frustrated, and when crunch fits a narrative that is no longer the narrative I'm trying to run, I get frustrated. So Super Dylan, I think that's super legit. Coming back around on crunch after taking a break. I think that's a natural cycle that people go through. Like I'm the sort of person who for a period of time I was playing D&D 4th edition and absolutely loving it, and the game did not have very much story at all. I still role played a bit of a character, but most of the game was through combat, but I'd like quip throughout the combat, and I had a lot of fun because I enjoyed the system and I enjoyed the crunch of it, and I thought it was fun and neat and cool. And it's very much not the sort of games that I run, but I had a ton of fun with it for for a year or two. So, you know, that's where I'm at. It's part of also the reason why I like Daggerheart, at least what I've read of it so far. Haven't run it yet, but I find that Daggerheart's crunch is interesting to me in a way that I would love to engage with it a bit more. But I've come to realize that I do like the crunch, because one of the things that we could have done is we could say, okay, well, we'll role play Changeling, but we just won't use the system. We'll just talk it through and we won't use dice. And I don't think that my players would react to that well at all. I don't think they would enjoy it. And I'm not sure that I'd enjoy it either. There's something very satisfying about playing with your math rocks, but also to have an injection of random, chaotic twists into your story, but also to give your players the opportunity to interact with that randomness and to try and overcome it in ways that aren't simply ephemeral or arbitrary, but also according to a rule set. That's fun. Like, that's kind of why people play it like this, because otherwise I could just sit in a room and tell you a story every night. And some people, that would be fantastic, but it's not the same thing. Kung Fu Fenris saying that I like games like good peanut butter, crunchy and smooth. Yeah, in a lot of ways. We're saying I like enough crunch that it gives structure, but not enough that the dice are telling me what happens. Yeah, and it's weird because there's also different kinds of crunch, and there's different kinds of ways that crunch interacts. Like, I've made it no secret, I don't like Edge of the Empire. Because I don't like that I don't like their mechanics of threat and opportunity. If that's indeed the right words for them. Sometimes it's been a while. There's a lot of different systems that are running around in my head. Because I think that it puts too much onus on the players to start coming up with things when that's not necessarily the kind of game that I want to play. And it's not because I want to have more control than the players. It's because I don't want to force the players to have to start thinking about all this shit. That's not their problem. It's mine. I want them to focus on what's fun for them. And my players were not having fun with being like, well, I have 2 opportunity. What can I do with that? And there's charts in the book that you can look up to figure out what you can do with that. Or it says, or come up with something narrative. And they just didn't like engaging with the game that way. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of that. But other people, it's great. Those kinds of mechanics tend to do well if you have a storyteller who isn't as experienced, because it sort of shares the load. Flower Vargas says, is not liking Opportunity why you ended up dropping the Legend of the Five Rings thing that you had going on? Partly. So L5R, as you can see, is also still in the bookshelf, right? As a game that we were thinking of playing. I had adapted the setting to Neo Rokugan to make it more of a cyberpunk-esque game using the same sort of thing. There were a couple of reasons why we chose to not go into it. In the end, it was my call. I was the one who said that I was not comfortable continuing, and my players were okay with that. We discussed it and we went over it and we're trying to figure out if we could solve the problems, and we couldn't, so we dropped it. But there were a few things. One, a lot of the game is just dice tricks. What I mean by dice tricks is that the powers that you have are just like, well, I get to roll an extra die, or I get to not roll an extra die, and there isn't really a whole lot of interesting use cases behind it. There isn't you might want to do this because it will have this effect, but only in this circumstance, or it will cost you this resource, but this resource can also be used in another way. A lot of the abilities are just, yeah, you're just better at this, or yeah, you're just worse at this, which I found a little frustrating. There was another issue that we ran into, which came down to a Shut Up and Sit Down video that we were watching. I'm a fan of Shut Up and Sit Down. They're a group of content creators who do mostly reviews of board games, but every once in a while they would review role-playing games. Quinn's, one of their members, now also has his own channel called Quinn's Quest, where he reviews role-playing games in this kind of faux 80s infomercial style, which you can take or leave, I think, depending on your opinion of it. I actually think it's kind of fun. Hi, Eremetheus. Quinn's is doing a really good job, but Quinn's was mentioning at one point in one of the videos that he had some of his favorite role-playing experiences, and he listed L5R, not this version, but an earlier version, L5R as a game that he loved, but he realized he would probably never play again because it was him and his white friends sitting around talking a lot about honor, and it made him cringe. And I saw that video and I went, fuck. L5R is based very heavily on things like the Code of Bushido and which is a real world concept, right? A lot of it is fictionalized, but it's still fictionalized in a way that it's tied into the culture of a real world nation. And it started to feel a little bit like, even though we were moving it from one setting to another, it started to feel a little bit too much like we were doing a bit too much appropriation that we felt comfortable with putting on a video or on a stream that would then exist in the world permanently. It is the same reason why I don't want to play Scion. Yes, the Code of Bushido is as much fan fiction as L5R. I completely agree, but it is still rooted in a real world culture. It is still associated with a real world culture. Because I could say the same thing about a lot of things, right? Whether or not you believe religious texts, right? Like whether you say, because there's lots of things people argue about the validity of religious texts and all that, is that old fan fiction that had time to have an impact? Yeah, to a certain degree. Remember that all fiction is fan fiction to a certain degree. Somebody had to write it. But we don't play Scion online either. Like, Scion 2nd edition came around, and the thing is, like, we have players who are fans of things like American Gods, and it was a system that the story path system at least is somewhat similar to the storyteller system. And the concept of it, of like, oh, you're the son or daughter or child of a god, and that's kind of cool and all of that. The issue though is that Scion plays with real world shit, and real world shit is different when you look at the makeup of our group, and we're doing it publicly. I forget who it was now, and now I'm going to be annoyed that I don't actually have the information in front of me. But there's I really wish I could remember who it is now. Maybe somebody will come up and know it. But there's paying attention not only to what you are doing, like what game you're playing but also the community in which you are playing in. And most of the time the community is the people at your table. So if you are alone in your living room and you are playing with 4 other friends and you are talking about, well, I want to be the son of Quetzalcoatl, and you want to be the daughter of Thor, and you want to be, related to one of the kami of. But if you're in your living room, you can all know that you have the best of intentions, and you can play with those best of intentions. But you can also kind of understand that if you slip up, no one's going to know but you. And you're also probably not going to take your experiences in that game and go out into the real world and start interacting with people as if you know everything about their culture. But we're doing it online. We're streaming it to an audience and then uploading it to YouTube, where it is permanent. We assume that anything that we do that is streamed, somebody could save it and then just use it forever. Even if we decided that we wanted to delete it, it could potentially be out there for everyone to read or see. And so that's one of the issues. We don't want to misrepresent any of these real world religions, pantheons, right? Like, and it's not enough to say like, well, are there anybody who actually worships Odin and Thor? I know people who say they do. And so therefore I have to assume that there are people who are out there who are actively worshiping Odin and Thor. And so I don't want to make it look bad, and even though you can say, well, they're mythological features more than a religious figure. And so therefore but it's just not worth it for us. And in much the same way, when it comes to L5R, there just ran into this situation where we realized that we looked at each other and we were like, yep, we're 4 white people, and we'll be talking about how it's important for us to maintain a code of Bushido and for us to have honor. And I got squicked out. I started being like, I don't know if I'm as interested in potentially doing this. And so we were like, okay, well, can we rewrite the settings so that we're no longer doing it that way? And I was like, not only is that a lot of work, but then why are we using this system anyway? Why don't we use a system that we like better? Because none of us were huge fans of the system. So that's an issue. Yeah, see Kung Fu Fighters. I go out in the sun and snow every winter to stand around in a nozzle and fire to drink from a horn and speak about my emotion to Odin. And you might be okay with us playing Sign, but I don't know if everybody would be. So that's why we don't, and that's why we're not playing L5R. It is. So in the end, it was a combination of not being thrilled with the system. Initially, there was excitement that I had about it because it had some cool like dueling things, and I liked the concept of, a morality system playing in heavily into the game. And then I got worried about it, and I sort of dropped it. And it's also, in a lot of ways, the same thing about Coyote and Crow. And it's the same thing about another game that people have asked me to run, which is Thirsty Sword Lesbians. I think Thirsty Sword Lesbians is a cool ass game. I own Coyote and Crow and Thirsty Sword Lesbians and L5R. L5R in hard copy, but I own the other games in PDF form. I think they're great games. I don't know if I can run them on a stream. And that's unfortunate. Maybe one day I'll have the guts. I'm blaming myself here. I'm not blaming anybody else. Maybe one day I will have the guts to do it. But I don't know if I'd have the guts to run, say, Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is a game that's very much about the concept of, it ties into ideas about the patriarchy and about, queer spaces and queer identities and all that. And I think it's great. But I'm a straight white guy. I'm cis, het, white, non-religious, it just doesn't feel like my voice is the one that should go in there. And then there is also, you say that Thirsty Sword Lesbians says that you don't have to run it all that queer, but I also have experience where I've said like, oh yeah, this is a great game, and then someone's like, yeah, but if you don't run it the way that it's designed, then you're a problem. And I just don't want to run a game on stream where I then have to dodge people accusing me of not doing it properly. It's an issue. But it's part of the thing of like, I think Coyote and Crow are great. I think games that deal with Afrofuturism are great. I think all of these things are wonderful, but I just don't know if I should be the one to do it, because I don't think that paradoxically, I don't think I'm actually big enough to do that, because I think people will tune into a stream, not see who I am, see that we have 20 or so viewers and be like, why is this bald jackass white guy running Thirsty Sword Lesbians? And then it becomes a thing that I'd have to address. But then there's the counter argument. And yet if I ran it, then that would normalize it to a certain extent. It would make it look like anybody could play this game. And I'm sure the people who made the game would love to see normal people play this game. Normal, I shouldn't say normal, but like, let's say normative, non-marginalized people playing this game. But that's the thing. A lot of my NPCs that I play are, I have played male presenting, female presenting, non-binary, trans, gender fluid, sexually fluid, gay, bi, straight, asexual. Like I've played those gamuts. So then why can't I play Thirsty Sword Lesbians? Like I don't know, and I don't know if I have those answers properly. It's a tough call, but I will admit, and again, this is my problem, something that I'm struggling with, something that I will have to deal with at some point, is the instant that I have to start dealing with people who are not satisfied with what I'm doing and who might hassle me because of the way that I choose to run a game, makes me a lot less likely to want to play it online. And that's a problem. There's certain things that I'll defend no issue, but like, I don't want to sully a game that I think is good, like Thirsty Sword Lesbians, by the discourse being around me. I'd rather the discourse be around the game. And maybe I'm just being too sensitive about it. The other thing that I'll point out is that a lot of these games that have come out, like Coyote and Crow and Thirsty Sword Lesbians, they often are not the sorts of games that we would want to play for a long period of time on this channel anyway, because they're not the kind of crunch that we want to engage with, or their settings are too nebulous and won't lend themselves well to long-term campaigns. It was brought up that, what about Avatar? Avatar is based on various different Eastern cultures and indigenous cultures. Exalted is in the same way. Exalted is heavily influenced by Eastern mythology. But those are separated enough from their real world counterparts that I don't feel worried about portraying them. It's one thing to cast somebody in, say, an Avatar adaptation, right? And to cast a white actor in a part that in the cartoon was played by, or rather portrayed as somebody of, say, Inuit heritage, right? That I totally get. But in terms of us role-playing, when we're just talking and the like, we're not playing Inuit. We're playing Water Tribe or Fire Nation or Earth Kingdom characters. So there's a big difference there in terms of attachment to direct real world places. There's enough steps removed for us that we felt comfortable doing it. But a game like Scion references directly real world places. And Legend of the Five Rings doesn't separate itself enough, I'm afraid. It's got too many references to things like samurai, Bushido. It references concepts that are part of the real world. It and as much as it's like, no, it takes place in Rokugan, that's totally not Japan. And yeah, we do pull influences from other places like Korea and China. It's not removed enough. This is also a game where it had a card game, a living card game was released. Originally, it had a different card game, and then it was retooled and remade. L5R right around the time that Fantasy Flight took control of the property, and in tournaments for Legend of the Five Rings, players were supposed to shout out "Banzai" at the start of the tournament as kind of like a call to honor, and that got a lot of bad press. And probably that sort of like that requirement was dropped, but it was in the rules. It was in the rules that for tournament play, that's what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to, it was like a call for sportsmanship and for honor and for people to, but like a call to battle. Yeah. But like it also has real world consequences, because that was basically saying you have to use a language that isn't your own. That's a real word in a real language from a real people that exists today, and that there were also counter calls because there's a lot of baggage surrounding that word based on things that happened in previous wars. It was the old AEG ideas. FFG originally kept it and then got rid of it, as I remember. But yeah, it's a big deal. So it's just the sort of things that we pay attention to when we're choosing games, which is why L5R ended up. Anyway, very long story to wrap it up. I started to feel a little too pressured from its real world stuff, and the setting wasn't the system wasn't interesting enough for me to get involved. I'll be honest with you, role-playing games that are released by Fantasy Flight are games that right now I'm not very interested in playing because I don't like their dice. I don't like Star Wars dice. I don't like Genesis dice. I own way too many of these dice because I've tried playing both of them. I don't like L5R's dice. I find that they are making too much of an effort to make their games sell peripherals, which I get. I totally understand. People need money, and role-playing space is not a place which pays terribly highly, but fuck do I hate those dice. And FFG doesn't also do role-playing stuff at this point. But I'm just not a fan. W5, V5, Hunter 5, yes, they have special dice that you can buy, but you can also use D10s without any problem. You don't have to have a chart to look up to see exactly what the dice mean. So that helps. Wonder how I'd feel about the Middle East culture adjacent elements in Coriolis. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the game, so I'd have to have a take a look. But I'd have to check. I am currently an employee of a company that is owned by Embracer, so I won't make comments on that at this time. So we're over time because I got defensive. Not that anybody was like accusing me of anything. I got defensive because of myself. But maybe I'll wrap this up. Tomorrow there are a bunch of streams that are happening. Let me just pull it up here. Yeah, so tomorrow Scott is going to be playing in his Doomed stream. He'll be playing some Arkham Horror at 11 o'clock Eastern, and then at 3 o'clock Eastern will be Drew Crew. So you can look forward to that. But then on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, we'll be playing session 31 of our Werewolf 5th Edition campaign, Montreal by Moonlight. So thanks so much for tuning in. Super appreciated. I'll see you next time. But don't forget, it is really hard, as we've even discussed today. But sometimes the best thing that you can do is use your word hole. See you later.